So that's all the bad news I'll share. Let's stop there. And I'm happy to come back on any of the data if that's helpful to anyone else in the conversation. This portion of it really is to say these challenges are so large, they're so significant, that we can't solve them if we don't come together across education, across workforce development, and across economic development. So a quick question. Of these three options here, could I have, raise your hand if you identify primarily with our education system in Maine? Excellent. And if you identify the workforce development system, could you raise your hand? And then how about economic development or business school? Now who would raise their hand if you'd say all three? Because that's the point of all of that data we shared, and that's the point of what follows on this next presentation, is that for too long we've defined workforce in the middle there as something far narrower, program-specific or funding-specific. The larger role of workforce is to connect these two larger systems and put them together. So what follows is how, and some of you, I apologize if you've seen parts of this presentation, I'm going to repeat it here. The education system is accused of training and praying. Train individuals and then pray, maybe you look a little bit, but you pray that they find work and find a job with what you taught them. But where that system has been moving for a long time across the country is towards a concept called career pathways. Again, I'll walk through these ideas quickly. This is our current education system, roughly speaking, if you look at the institutions. Starting with high school, an individual moves into one of these other four areas, and there are more. The adult basic education system too often is not connected to that system depending on how it operates across the country. Too often too, CTE programs aren't even mentioned, they're not even noticed on the diagrams like this. So the system as a whole is often too fragmented and it's too hard to move through this and across it. So the first thing that a career pathway program, good ones, is they try to figure out how do we put arrows in between these systems so individuals can move across it. And while an arrow is easy to put on a slide, in practice this means support programs for individuals, it means stackable credentials so you can build on it. It also means a focus on what happens when we exit out of this system. What are the workforce jobs that this system is preparing individuals for? And once they move into a job, are they able to move back into this education system now? So it's a true pathway of education that's linked to a career, not just a job, but a career that individuals can move through. There's a whole body of work and there's a whole set of sessions that we do on career pathway pieces. There's some strong programs in Maine that have been in place for a little while. So we can get more expertise on this particular topic. But it's how the education system's trying to address some of these challenges where it's a particular focus. Economic development, too, has been adapting over the last several decades on realizing it, too, needs to face these challenges in a new way. So where often economic development is accused of just focusing on business attraction, tax environment, and others, sometimes it's accused of spending lots of money on tax incentives for single companies. It's increasingly asking other partners to come together and focus on a new concept of industry clusters. And clusters, again, has been around for 15, 20 years, and it's a fairly simple idea with a whole lot of incredible power. The idea is that rather than working with one employer, you look across several businesses in a single industry. Small businesses, medium firms, large anchor firms, whoever that is that works in a similar industry, they have a number of factors that tie them together. The first is that they all share similar markets and buyers. They're focused on the same individuals to buy their products. They also have similar supply chains, so a network of not just products, but other companies that supply them, and a commonality across how those those different products are presented to them. Infrastructure is similar. Sometimes this is roads and bridges. Increasingly, it's broadband access. Increasingly, it's energy costs. But they have similar concerns and interests on infrastructure. Same thing with innovation and technology. A lot of firms have outsourced their R&D to nowhere. They usually don't have time to do this work. But every company that's going to thrive needs to be thinking about their next generation of products, and they share this in common. But in today's environment, the biggest thing that they have in common is labor. We hear lots about skill demands. We hear lots about companies that can't find the skilled labor they need. Too often employers can't tell you when you really push them what are those skills that you don't have. So we can't let them get away with just saying that. But in commonality across different employers, they are looking for the same individuals with the same set of skills. And so what economic development increasingly has done is that rather than just focus on one particularly big employer, we're going to look at the whole cluster of individuals and try to make that cluster competitive for our state. So again, there's lots we could say about industry cluster development, and there's a lot of work out there, and NJ's done a lot of work on industry clusters. But I'm going to add one more piece, workforce development. does a lot with labor exchange or customized training, helping individuals connect to the labor market, but also helping individual employers who may need a particular set of training, providing that training. But again, rather than working with individual employers, this concept of sector partnerships or industry partnerships has been done in several states for a very long time. And scaling it up is certainly a focus of what lots of states are trying to do now. Again, this slide I particularly like because this is the hardest thing about industry partnerships, is that it takes a credible convener who can get employers to come to the table and spend some of their quality time and have credibility with those employers to say, I've got something worth your time. But that convener, that intermediary, sits at a table first by themselves and says, how do I start this? How do I really build a vibrant partnership? And where it starts is with those industry members. And the more urgent the need of those industry members, the stronger this partnership's going to be. In Maine, I know there's a healthcare partnership that is very vibrant because they have a very strong need for labor. They have a very strong need for a set of skills they're not getting. And so those employers understand intuitively, we need to come together and solve this problem. Industry partnerships like this exist in every state, sometimes in lots of regions because employers can't wait any longer because it's now a competitiveness issue. Worried that they can't survive if they don't address these issues. So in a lot of states, it's more about identifying where our industry members are already coming together to solve problems. But once you've identified key industries, you then bring the strategic partners to the table. So in the healthcare example, if it is a particular line of training, such as a curriculum, if there's a bottleneck in the pipeline of training, whatever those challenges are, you get the right strategic partners at that table that can help address that challenge and start to solve those problems. And working as a team, coming together to really produce outcomes for not just employers, but also for individuals. And we've got some research with some statistical information to say that actually individuals, here on the bottom left, that are part of a sector partnership like this are more likely to exit poverty, they're more likely to make more money, and they're more likely to get benefits. Because those employers now have engaged in, we're investing in our workforce. We're going to spend more money on our workforce. We want to retain them. We want to make sure they're the right ones. They do assessments up front. They're engaged in a way they're not normally engaged in. And the same thing for employers. Because they do that work, they have less turnover. So they save more money on trying to find new talent. They've got talent that's invested in their companies. All of this creates a ripple effect, and the benefits are strong for just about everybody. The hard part is getting everyone at the table and spending the time to do the hard work that up till now they often haven't done. So those are the three big concepts that we have been pushing, certainly at NGA, within states for a while. Governor Fallon's initiative, in many ways, is about pulling these together. So where you have identified an industry cluster, and how a state looks at this is, what are our real growth-generating sectors in our state? A region does the same thing. What are our key industries in our region that makes us economically vibrant? Let's identify those industries, find out who those employers are, and get them together. Same thing on the education side. What's our education system now that's providing individuals for that industry? And that's where the sector or industry partnership comes together. It's not just a partnership of individuals solving unique problems. To the extent that that can become a vibrant partnership, it starts to act like a gear, driving the industry cluster to be more vibrant, to be more competitive, to add skilled workers, to even add new jobs. There's entrepreneurship that builds out of this. Think Silicon Valley, which is the classic big example that does this, but also think about, I'm from Colorado, so we're trying to build a winery community in Western, and so we've gone from 18 to 42 wineries because they've learned from each other, not recreated the wheel, and built a vibrant cluster. The education system now has something to align to and target. And so as this partnership becomes more vibrant, you start to see a real connection now between that cluster and the education system that's providing skilled workers for that group. And then there's all sorts of other added synergies that happen that I won't go into now, but this is far more than counting, well, we had 20 meetings last year, so we're effective. There's a lot of different benefits that come out of this that are hard to quantify, but we certainly want to capture and talk about. And usually one of the things that happen when I'm just doing this part of the presentation, and if I have a strong group, cross-cutting group, is that an economic developer in the room will say, Garrett, this is wonderful, this is great, but why is the partnership on top? I understand why I need that, but aren't we really about building economic development? Isn't this really about the vibrancy of our state and our economy? That really should be on top. And to that person I say, you're absolutely right. You start with the industry cluster, because that's the most important thing that you're doing, and you need to think about what are the key industries in the state, because if you're not thinking about the right industries and you're not growing that group, you're not going to have this strong connection. But if you're also not thinking about what is our education pipeline for those employers, you're not going to get the scale and you're not going to deliver the way you should. And if you don't have an active partnership, then you've got no mechanism to really drive this and make it come together. But then immediately then, and you probably know this is going to go, I'll have an educator in the room that'll say, but I'm not about economic development. That's not what this is about. If you're not thinking about individuals, if you're not thinking about those that the system is not taking care of, if you're not thinking about the low income, lower skill, and moving them into our economy, then what good is all of this? And to them I say, you're absolutely right. You start with a career pathway, and you look at your education system, and you look at how people are moving through it, and you get together a lot of really good data to say, where are people leaking out of our system? Where are they dropping out? What programs are really good at this? Which ones can we do more thinking about? How can we learn from ourselves? But if you're not looking at the industry cluster that they're moving into, if you're not thinking about the career path, then you're still building bridges potentially to nowhere. And again, if you don't have a vibrant partnership, and no offense to anybody that really has strong advisory committees for a particular institution, those can be really great. But too often they're rubber stamp committees where employers come to an advisory committee and they say, yeah, that curriculum looks good. But they don't talk about their competitiveness issues. They're not learning about retention. Employers aren't learning about how they could get a lot more out of that system. So doing a strategic partnership is critically important to them. I'm going to try to keep moving through my slides quickly. I wanted to give you one example of what this looks like, just to move away from diagrams. So in Virginia, they have a career pathway initiative that really tries to bring all these pieces together. It's in a particular part of the state they call the Virginia Peninsula. It's regional. They've engaged, for this one's a manufacturing partnership. They've got 14 manufacturers in that region. Local Workforce Investment Board is very much engaged, and community colleges in the area are engaged, and they've engaged the school districts to get the whole pipeline focused on what the challenges are. Together they've identified that there are some research and development. Those manufacturers need to develop their next generation of products. So they're using the university system to think through a little bit of that, and the talent that they need, the high-level STEM individuals for talent. They also want to build this career pathway model. They understood that they need to connect all these pieces. But the real driver is the third point here. They identified 11,000 jobs in the next 5 years that they anticipate hiring for that they can't fill because they can't find people in their area that have the skill sets that they're looking for. So because of that urgent need, they came together as a region and they did their inventory about the skills. So they didn't allow the employers to say, well, I'm not getting what I need, so go fix that. They said, all right, let's sit down and identify what are those skill sets that you're not getting so that we can actually solve this problem. And really look at our education system, because often educators are providing pieces of what's needed. Employers need to connect better to that system. And then they did a roadmap to success. They built a strategic plan on how they're going to get there. This isn't just a vision. It has a lot of elements that they're now executing. What this looks like, here, this is the breakdown on those 11,000 jobs. They looked at each one of the different occupations, how many they're projected to get, and what they needed to build towards. They also looked at their education system. Don't worry about the words on this chart. The important part is they looked at every post-secondary education institution and the different levels of degrees and credentials that they provide in their system. So now they've got the open jobs, they have the education piece, and all they did was try to line those up together and build a real career pathway system. So this chart on the top, they weren't going to get there just looking at youth. So they've got their youth pipeline, but they also have an adult pipeline. Where do those individuals, what's the level of credentials they need to get into this pathway in the system? How do they move through that? And each one of these different boxes is a new level of educational attainment. But what I particularly like about this simple diagram is that those that are shaded in the darker green, someone can stop out at that point and get a job in that educational sector, in that industry cluster. So they're paying particular attention to what are the stop out points where someone can get a job, make some income, and come back into the system and continue to move up that career pathway.